Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and tackle the classic dilemma practically every car buyer has to face at some point, choosing between a petrol and a diesel engine. We're keeping things very old school today, focusing strictly on these two traditional titans of the road. No electric vehicles, no hybrids, just pure traditional combustion. We're going to explore exactly what makes them tick, how they actually feel behind the wheel, and ultimately what they're going to do to your wallet.
To figure out which one is the right fit for you, we're going to strip away the dense engineering jargon and put these two foundational technologies in a head-to-head battle. Because honestly, whether you're just doing a quick 15-minute commute to the office, running the kids to school, or hauling heavy cargo across the country, your choice of fuel fundamentally alters the DNA of your driving experience.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the magic of ignition, or simply, what happens under the hood.
Let's take a peek inside the actual engine block. Now, at first glance, petrol and diesel engines look incredibly similar. They both rely on the exact same basic four-stroke sequence to get you moving. First is the intake stroke, which sucks air into the cylinder. Second is compression, where the piston pushes up to squash that air. Third is ignition, creating a powerful explosion that forces the piston back down. That's your power stroke. And finally, the exhaust stroke pushes the burnt, leftover gases out. Just imagine this violent, perfectly choreographed dance happening literally thousands of times every single minute you're driving. It's pretty wild.
But here is where the twin comparison falls apart, and it's all about the compression ratio. Diesel engines have a much higher compression ratio, which completely changes the game for how the fuel burns. While the petrol engine compresses a mix of air and fuel to a somewhat moderate degree, a diesel engine takes pure air and squeezes it incredibly tightly. We're talking about internal pressures so extreme that the diesel engine block itself literally has to be built noticeably thicker and heavier, just so it physically doesn't tear itself apart from the stress of daily operation. And because of that intense squeeze, their paths completely diverge. Petrol's kind of like lighting a match in a gas-filled room. It uses a spark plug to ignite that premixed fuel and air. Diesel, on the other hand, is like squeezing a balloon so intensely and so fast that the air inside gets scorching hot enough to spontaneously ignite the fuel. The engine injects the fuel at the absolute last possible microsecond into that superheated, highly compressed pure air, causing an immediate, violent auto-ignition. No spark plugs required for the whole shebang.
Moving right along to Section 2, torque versus power. Translating those internal mechanics to the road.
So how do those explosive internal differences dictate the actual feel of the car when your foot hits the pedal? Well, because of that extreme pressure we just talked about, diesel engines deliver massive pulling strength, what we call torque, at really low speeds. They are absolute heavy-duty workhorses. You feel this right when you drive off. The car easily and confidently rolls forward with authority, even at low RPMs. This is exactly why diesel is the engine of choice for heavy trucks, towing caravans, and why so many driving schools use them. You rarely stall, and you just don't need to frantically shift gears when you're stuck in stop-and-go traffic.
On the flip side of that coin, petrol engines are designed to rev and rev fast. They deliver high peak power and really rapid, snappy acceleration for a much sportier driving experience. Because the ignition process using that spark plug is so precise and controlled, the engine can spin at much higher RPMs. Sure, you have to work the gears a little bit more to find that power, but that's part of the fun, right? That is exactly why when you watch motorsports or jump into a lightweight sports car, it is almost always powered by a high-revving petrol engine.
Now, it is absolutely worth noting how modern engineering is shifting these traditional boundaries. Today, turbochargers are really closing that historical performance gap. A turbo uses the engine's own exhaust gases to spin a compressor, packing way more oxygen into the cylinders. This means a smaller petrol engine can suddenly deliver the punchy, low-end torque you'd normally associate with a diesel, and a diesel can find some extra top-end speed. So the lines are definitely blurring, but those foundational characteristics still heavily influence the overall feel of the drive. All right, let's get down to business. Section 3, costs and consumption, and the impact on your wallet.
Let's look at the most practical part of this explainer, because no matter how much you love the roar of an engine, the math has to make sense for your lifestyle. As you can see in the table, it's a classic economic trade-off. Diesel gives you fantastic fuel efficiency, often averaging around a 1:18 ratio, giving you an unmatched range per tank. However, because diesel engines are heavier and produce complex particulates, they require really expensive emission control systems, which saddles you with much higher fixed monthly road taxes. Petrol, while slightly thirstier at a 1:13 ratio, benefits from significantly lower road tax and generally simpler, cheaper routine maintenance.
So, the crucial pivot point in this whole debate comes down to this exact number, 20,000.
Specifically, 20,000 to 25,000 kilometers is the annual break-even threshold for your wallet. If you drive less than 20,000 kilometers a year, the lower fixed costs of a petrol car make it the clear, undeniable winner. But once your commute or your lifestyle pushes you across that threshold, the math flips entirely. The massive fuel savings you accumulate at the pump with the diesel start to heavily outweigh those painful monthly road taxes.
Bringing it all home with Section 4, your ideal choice and making the final decision.
Let's tie all this data together so you can figure out your perfect match. If you primarily do short trips, mostly drive around the city, and you confidently stay well under that 20,000 kilometer mark, the simplicity, faster warm-up times, and lower upfront and fixed costs of petrol win hands down. It's a no-brainer. But if you are a highway warrior racking up serious long distances, or you regularly tow heavy loads, the diesel's raw efficiency and low-end torque reign supreme. In that case, it is well worth the investment in its more complex emission systems.
So, now that you understand the raw mechanics under the hood, the actual performance you'll feel on the road, and the cold hard math in your bank account, take a hard look at your own driving habits. Do you need the high-revving, sporty sprint of a petrol engine or the marathon endurance and towing power of a diesel? Ask yourself which technology truly drives your life. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and we will catch you next time.